So, Josh, thank you so much for coming back on the show. I think this is your third time. Remind everybody who you are and what you do.
Is it really my third? I
I
did
think
not
so.
even
Yeah.
realize that.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I feel honored, Andy. Thank you so much for having me back. Yeah, I am the host of the All Things Secured YouTube channel and website. My whole goal is to just simplify complex privacy and security issues that I know all of us are having to face in some way or another as we just enter into this constantly changing world of online and digital privacy.
Yeah. Constantly changing is absolutely right. We've seen like technology is just taken off, especially with AI and all of that. But today I wanted to bring you in and talk about home security cameras because I was wanting to cover this aspect of kind of like behind the scenes of home security cameras, what happens beyond the lens. And then you came out with this amazing video that explained pretty much everything that I was researching. I'm like, well, let's just bring Josh on and have him explain it and use his expertise. So,
Well, good.
generally speaking, people can get two types of home security cameras, ones that run off of Wi-Fi and ones that are wired. Kind of break those down for us and tell us what we need to know.
Yeah, well, between those two categories, wired and wireless, you have different strengths and different weaknesses. And what I said in that video, and I'll probably reiterate a few times as we're talking here, is there isn't like a single best camera system because we all have really different needs and different threat models. And so when I think of wired versus wireless, a lot of it has to do with one, convenience, and two, what you're protecting against, right? So when it comes to wired, there's a lot of inconvenience when it comes to installation. Running wires through your house, unless you have it pre-wired, can be really time consuming, maybe even costly. And then you're also having to worry about, what if those wires get cut? So you need to make sure that those wires are put in or installed in a way that are not easy to tamper with. However, on the wireless side of things, although it's so much easier to install from a consumer point of view, it's also somewhat easy to jam a wireless system.
Right.
And then if everything relies on that connection to the internet, if something happens to your connection to the internet, that can also hamper how you're able to access the footage from your camera, where and how it's stored, all of that stuff. So again, there are pros and cons to each. I would say the average person is probably going to do best with a wireless system, and thankfully that's the one that's most available on the market right now.
Right. Yeah. Like just walking down my street, I can see, okay, that's a ring over there. That's, all this one and that one and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, they're everywhere now, which I think is good for homeowners because a lot of people wanted to go out and get those because it does give you a sense of security and documenting what's happening on your property. But a lot of us don't think about like what happens on the other side of that lens. So kind of walk us through what happens to this data? What's the workflow? Where does it go after the camera?
Yeah. That is the key question, I think. When I'm worried about the data privacy and everything that's happening, I think for me it really breaks down into three different ways that our data is both stored and accessed. So you have two options of storage. One is local and one is cloud. A lot of the cameras you're going to see from Google, from Amazon, they they basically force you to store everything in the cloud, meaning on their servers. So it's going to be on AWS servers, it's going to be on Google servers, could be anywhere in the world. It will be protected to some degree, like it will be encrypted in some way, but those files are not stored at your house. They're uploaded through the internet and stored in the cloud. The other option you have is local storage, right? That could be some kind of base station that comes with your camera system, or if you have a NAS, which is a network attached storage. I always have a hard time saying that altogether.
It
A
is a tongue
network
twister.
attached storage. If you have that set up, you can arrange a number of different camera systems to record directly to your NAS. And so now you own the files and they're stored locally. But within that, there are differences in how you access those files. So there, like I said, going back to those three ways, let's say that you've got local storage, local access, right? That's one way that you can have a setup. That's where everything from my camera goes into some kind of local storage, and I can only access that locally. I go in, I plug in a USB drive, or I get on my computer, whatever it is, and I can access that. The risk there, by the way, just so you know, when you're doing anything with local, is that one, if I'm a burglar and I go in and I see that you have a camera system, and maybe I know that kind of camera system, I'm like, oh, all I've got to do is grab the base station where it holds all of the local files and rip it out. I would consider where you place that base station instead of just putting it, right out with a sign that says, "This is where I store all of my camera footage."
Right.
Just be careful about that. It's a little bit harder with the NAS to be able to go in and take that, but that's still the possibility. So you have local storage, local access. Then you have what I'm going to call local storage virtual access.
Mhm.
That's where you could actually set it up with your NAS, where you could have a VPN that goes into that NAS, which is a network, a virtual network where I could be anywhere in the world and I can access those files. Same with the system that I've set up right now. It has local storage, but I can access it through my phone virtually anywhere in the world. So it's still stored locally, but I have virtual access. And then finally, we've got cloud storage, cloud access. And that's where everything's stored in the cloud with Amazon, with Google, or with whoever. And now I can access it through their system and get access to those files. And it's a lot harder for a burglar or anybody else to get those files erased. So there is a little bit of protection there.
Yeah, and you broke those down beautifully, and you're right, being able to have, like, if it's local, if that's what you're looking for, that's great, but you've gotta hide that server, so, I guess I'll take my big sign down that says, that's where it goes. It's a great security tip there, Josh.
Yeah.
But yeah, then you have the convenience of the cloud. So, for everybody who's listening, all right, we're kinda talking about stuff that most consumers don't really think about. Why do I need to care about this? Why do I need to care about this flow of this data and how it's managed?
And it's interesting. Andy, you and I didn't really have much of a pre-call conversation here. One of the things that I wrestled with, even before I made my own video about all of this, is just this idea that, do I really care? Like, and I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's like, okay, I've got a
Uh-huh.
camera on my porch that's facing the street. Do I really care if somebody else gets access to that footage? And
Mhm.
I want to acknowledge that, especially for somebody that's listening to this or watching this and thinking to themselves, why are we, what? This just seems over the top. Who cares if it's stored locally or in the cloud? We're talking about a camera that's pointed at my backyard or a camera that's pointed at my front yard. And I totally get that. And again, when it comes to this type of stuff, there are levels of, I don't want to call it paranoia because that sounds bad. There are just threat levels where different people are comfortable with different things.
Mhm.
And so just because you don't mind having your front porch, you could broadcast that on YouTube and you don't care. Others of us actually do care. And I think there's a step up whenever, if you're the type of person that has any kind of camera that's pointed inside your house. One,
Yeah.
I would be very careful about that in general.
Yes.
But
Mhm.
two, if there is a camera that's pointed inside your house, that's when I would say, okay, where is your data being stored and how and who can access that footage? Because we've seen and we've heard the news stories that are sometimes a little fantastic and wild about they were in their nursery and then some person just randomly started talking to them through their
Mhm.
speakers. The reality is nothing terrible happened because of that, but the feeling of invasion of privacy,
Sure.
it's kind of like just being burglarized or having someone, get into your car. Even if they didn't steal anything, it's just this feeling of, oh my goodness, like that was my that was private stuff and somebody just got into that. So as you think about setting up these cameras, making sure all right, how comfortable am I if this footage was seen by anybody else, and then acting accordingly. Does that mean that I need to get local storage? Does that mean that I need to change the way that I place these cameras? All of that should play into your decisions.
Agreed completely. And you started your response with, "Oh, if it's just my front yard or if it's just my backyard, who really cares?" And I completely agree there. But, talking about bringing the cameras inside the home, that's when things really start to step up. I
Yeah.
pretty much tell folks, like, I don't trust cameras inside my house. So, like, that's just one thing I don't really want to go for. And I know that that's something that is important to you as well.
Well, on the to play devil's advocate here for just a moment, because you're right. I don't have any cameras in my house, and I don't think I would, but I do
Mhm.
have one in my studio here. There's a lot of high value equipment, and I could see, okay, let's say you're the type of person that has a music room that has a lot of high value instruments or something, and you want to be able to monitor that, or you have your own studio, or you have this place that you want to make sure is, your kid, no kid is getting into this place, or there's it remains safe. Those are times in which I can say, I can see, okay, there's a reason why you want to have a camera in this place.
Right. Yeah, and really, I don't want it to, like, capture footage of, like, me and my family in intimate moments, like
Yeah.
eating dinner or, like, earlier tonight when a taco fell all over my shirt and I had to change and all that sort of stuff. That's the kind of stuff I don't really want anybody seeing. So, going back to,
Those
like,
are
the
family
date.
memories only, right?
Exactly. Yeah, those are the embarrassing moments that I just want my wife and my son to know. Yeah, yeah. So, going back to like the data management of this, um, does it matter like if we have cloud storage? Does it matter where those cloud servers are located, like what country they're in, that sort of thing? Is that something that we need to be concerned about?
Yeah. Well, now we're getting into some stuff that goes beyond just cameras.
Right.
When I talk about anything that's made electronically, and especially when we're dealing with data storage, um, I am somewhat concerned about origin. Where
Mhm.
where are the products that I'm using manufactured? There are reasons to be possibly concerned about that. And then where is the data being stored? Is this servers in Asia? Is this servers in the US? And you talk to most companies and they'll tell you, oh, if you're in the US, we'll store it on US servers. It even makes sense. It's a lot closer, but there's not always that guarantee. Um, they're going to put it on there. Maybe they'll keep a copy on another server. The reason why that's important, though, is because when it comes to encryption, encryption is taking and turning data that is personal data. Maybe it's even just the way that you access the internet. It could be these files that you store, and scrambling that so it's not easy to see, right? I like to think of
Mhm.
encryption like a locked door. Whatever's behind this locked door that's my private room, and I want to keep things private that are in there, be it your video files or an email that you sent. That's encryption. Now, when you lock that door, you have a key. That's your key to the encryption. And most of the time, when we're dealing with what's known as end-to-end encryption, I am the only person that owns that key. And that's a good thing, because that means that nobody else can get in that room. Nobody else can see those files except for me. The problem, and this is, a legitimate problem here, is that if I lose that key, nobody else can help me get access to
Right.
that room. So
Right.
responsibility is on me to make sure that I'm responsible with that key. So usually when we're dealing with companies like Amazon and Google, they don't want customers to go through the heartache of losing access. So they say, great, we're going to give you a key. And we're not really going to say this out loud, but just so you know, we're going to keep a key for ourselves so that if you lose your key, we can get in. It's still encryption, and we're going to still call it encryption. It's not end-to-end encryption, but we're going to still call it encryption because it is. But now we also have access. And that's what a lot of people don't realize when it comes to encryption, is that a lot of times these companies have back-end access. And that's where a rogue employee, or even an employee with a legitimate reason, can go in and access these files. So anything that I store in Google Drive, anything that I would store on a Google Nest, which is their camera system, or an Amazon Ring, I need to assume that an employee from Google or Amazon could access that. And
Yeah.
before I go any further, Andy, I want to mention one more thing. There are cases, and Amazon is one of them, where if you wanted to, you can go into the settings. By default, they keep a key, but you can go into the settings and request for end-to-end encryption. So in other words, you can go into Amazon's Ring and say, listen, I don't want you guys to have an extra key. I'm going to take on the responsibility of owning the only key and having end-to-end encryption, but I want that added security. You have to go in and do that, but it is possible.
Right. And that's a great point to bring up. We don't necessarily want other people to have keys to our house that we don't know, that we don't trust. So we don't want them to have the keys to the cameras to our house as well. And plus, There are some times where government agencies will lean on companies and say, hey, we really need to see what's going on here. Maybe that's legitimate, maybe it's not, but that's something that we also need to consider as well.
Yeah.
So, Josh, in all of your research and all of that you've done, give me the all things secure checklist. If I am buying a new camera system, what is it that I need to look for? What is it that I need to purchase?
So the framework that I came up for myself is I wanted to look at 5 different things. I wanted to look at the storage, where, and these are all things we've kind of already gone through right here. I want to look at the storage. I want to know, is it stored locally or in the cloud? And for me, I would prefer to store locally. I just want to be able to own those files. Connectivity. We talked about this. Do you want wired or do you want wireless? What is the origin? That's again, where was this camera made? Where is the data being stored? If it is being stored, or if we're accessing it, that's another thing that we didn't really talk about. Like if we're doing the local storage virtual access, how are you accessing that? If you set up your own
Mhm.
VPN, you can kind of dictate where that goes. But if you're going through a company, I use a camera from a Singapore company and I had to ask them, I emailed them and literally asked, how is this data flow? Where is it going through? And they told me it was going through Singaporean servers. And for me, I was okay with that, as opposed to servers in other Asian countries. The fourth thing I wanted to look at was pricing models. You're going to see this a lot where you can get into a monthly contract with these cameras that just it sets you up to spend a lot more than if you were to just do this one-time thing and one-time purchase. I don't want to like I don't know about you. I've already got a number of things, subscriptions that eat away at my monthly budget, and I don't want to add
Mhm.
another one just to have a camera, especially when there are so many great options that don't require a subscription. So, I would personally look for one that doesn't have a subscription pricing. And the final one is encryption. How is this data encrypted? And Andy, again, this is one of those things that if you go onto a camera manufacturer's website, every single one of them is going to say, we have the highest standard of encryption. We will
Sure.
protect your data. The only way you're really going to know, and even this, you're going to be taking their word for it, is emailing in and saying, can you explain what kind of encryption and is it end-to-end encryption? And they'll probably send you a detailed list that may not make sense. You can just pop it into Chat GPT and ask it, hey, explain this to me as if I'm a 5-year-old, and it'll be able to
Right.
do it. But those are the 5 things that I'm looking for: storage, connectivity, origin, pricing, and encryption. And all of that, if you were to take the first letters, spells scope. So if I'm scoping out what kind of camera that I want.
That's great. Yeah, and I like the acronym a lot because that really does encompass everything that, we need to go. So in thinking about these camera systems and everything that we have today, you talked about, hey, maybe we shouldn't care about this. And this is just a general privacy thing for somebody who says, Andy, I don't have anything to hide. I don't care if somebody can see my security footage. What do you say to that?
Yeah. And that's extremely common. And I want anybody who's listening or watching this who does kind of feel that a little bit to not feel like I'm or judging you in any way, because I'm not,
Mm-mm.
because my
Right.
parents even feel that. That is a natural feeling. And it's really a shift in your perspective here, because it's not about hiding something, which is generally the way we feel about privacy. Oh, somebody's worried about privacy because they're trying to hide something or trying to do something illegal. I wouldn't think of it like that. Uh, Privacy and the pursuit of good privacy is more about control and understanding that it's my data. So I want to be able to control who gets it, how they get it, and what they can do with it. And that is more when I change it to that perspective. There's a lot of things in our lives that we're not just going to give over to anybody that asks for it. And yet, for some reason, we do that with our data. We do that with our personal information. We do that with our address, our phone number, our credit card. And what happens? Well, we get inundated with spam. We get phishing calls and emails, like all of this stuff that potentially could be avoided. But the biggest thing that I want to point out here, Andy, is that the thing about privacy is that once you lose it, It's kind of like when we talk about, words spoken. Once
Mhm.
you've said that thing to your wife or you've said that thing that you wish you could take back, you can't like reverse time and like put it back in your mouth. The same thing applies to privacy. Once you've lost your privacy, you cannot gain it back. So I want to be as stingy as I can about what I have to give out because I don't want to find out later down the road, oh, I shouldn't have done that. The number of people that went onto MySpace and Facebook when it first was out and just went crazy sharing everything they wanted to
Yeah.
are like, they probably wish they hadn't have done that. I would rather be a little bit more cautious so that when quantum computers, come down the road or when AI becomes even more of an issue that I'm not looking back going, "Oh man, I wish I hadn't have just handed over all of my data because now look what's happened."
Yeah, I have this dystopian theory that probably in the next 20 years, somebody will be able to just, go to ChatGPT and type in who is Josh Summers or who is Andy Murphy. And it's going to pull up all of our social media stuff. It's going to pull up all of our, our pictures, our posts and everything. And it's gonna be creepy. It's gonna be real creepy.
Yeah.
But that's kind of my thoughts for the future.
Yep.
So Josh, like I'm going to run through a scenario here with you, and I want your thoughts on this. Think about the average two-story suburban home. I'm going to give you three security cameras. Where do you put them?
Hmm. Well, I mean, for me personally, I'm just gonna be worried mostly about the outside.
Hmm.
And I'm gonna put them in the places that are most vulnerable for the house. So I'm gonna be looking at the front, at the back, and then if the garage is off to the side or in some way not covered by the front camera, then I'd make sure that there's something in front of there as well. Unless, in my case, I had a studio that had high value equipment, I would make sure that there's a camera nearby, something like that. But people, you can everybody's gonna have a different reason for putting it in a different location. The way that I've set that up, as you hear me talking about it right now, I'm not putting one on the doorbell, which I know for some people
Hmm.
is something they really like and value, being able to see who's at the door, speaking to a delivery person. I don't live in the US, so this is like a scenario that it doesn't even cross my mind. Delivery people don't do this out here in Asia. But I can see a reason why that would be of value. I'd just be really careful about where it's pointing.
Right. Yeah, and that gets into a whole nother conversation of does it show too much of your neighbor's house and all that sort of stuff. But yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, no, those are great options there. I like that a lot. And one of the things that I thought of while we were talking was, if you decide that you want to do a wired security system in your home and you have the cameras with it, wonderful. You can still go buy a Ring doorbell and just put it on there, but that's the
Yeah.
only wireless option you have just so you can kind of track the Amazon delivery guy coming. There's no rule
Yeah.
that says you only have to have one system. If you have the budget for it and
Correct.
that's what you want, you can blend the two.
Yep. Exactly.
Awesome. So Josh, again, thank you so much for hanging out with me today, educating us on the back end of security cameras. I know people are going to want to know more about you and all things secured. So where can they find you online?
Well, they can always go to allthingssecure.com or they can find me on YouTube, which is at all things secured. And then if someone wants to message me, I am on Twitter/X. It's just at all_secured, I believe. And so I'm much quicker to answer that than I am email for sure.
Very cool, man. Well, I appreciate you. Thank you for helping us to try to remain more secure and private. God bless you, buddy.
Same to you, Andy. Thanks so much.